Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Test 2 3.
Test. Brian, can you hear us?
Well, good. Thanks for doing that. On a Monday.
Yeah. Yes. Test 1 2 3. Coming back at you.
Elizabeth,
Test.
can you put the Zoom call on the screen in the room? So we're having issues with our video again, but if you start your video, see if we can see you.
Test 1 2 3.
Yep, there you are. Well, we can see you and we can hear you.
You can hear my audio.
You're on. Your volume's a little low.
It would from no
I think that could be
got a question to just build
on the PC. It's the video that you do. It's putting that little box that's not there.
It sounds like you've got two microphones open. You've got some feedback.
Test 2 3. Test.
Stand by. All right, would you like to try it again, Brian?
Test 1 2 3. Test.
It's passable. It seems like when you start speaking, it begins to pick you up, but like the very beginning of your speech or your speaking is kind of cut off.
Test. I'll just longer. Test.
Yeah, it's super low and broken.
Test 1 2 3. Test.
That's a little better, but not much.
Maybe microphone quality as well.
It does sound like it's on your end microphone. How's our audio? Test 1 2 3 4 5.
Totally clear coming out.
Okay. Well, we can leave this up in between sessions. We can try again with a different mic since we're kind of up against it right now.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right, we will convene the budget, that's what we're doing, right?
Budget workshop.
Budget workshop for the city of San Clemente of Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. This is our other. First, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jake! Good man. You want to step to the podium and lead us?
Please place your hands over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Good job, Jake. We'll have to put you up as the model for the future.
Well, I was a scoutmaster.
There you go. I could tell. Roll call. Councilmember Enmeyer.
Present.
Councilmember Cabral.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Noblock.
Here.
And I am here. We have all 4 currently sitting council members. Can everybody hear me? On to the budget workshop.
If you're ready, first item on the agenda is presentation of the city's fiscal year 2023 third quarter financial report.
All right, so this is a nice warm-up for the budget. I'll go through this really quickly. There was a report in the agenda. Oh, Megan. There we go. Sorry. All right, so the third quarter report, again, we're covering general fund revenues and expenditures. General fund revenues at this point, you can see this is comparison to last year. Last year, we were at 67%. This year, we're at 64%. The revenue budget has gone up, which is the lighter column from the previous year, and we're kind of in line with where we would expect to be at this year. Some of the minor decreases were in intergovernmental. Again, that's primarily grants related, and timing for those are a little bit hard to predict at this point. But we're just moving through, and overall, there's a little bit more information on each of the different main categories in the report. We are where we would expect to be at this time of the year. Some of the big revenue sources, again, property tax. That's one of the city's general fund's main revenue sources. We're at 63%, and we were at 63% in the previous year. Just a little bit of a picture of where we are in comparison to last year. So it is up from the previous year. Sales tax, we're essentially kind of flat, a little bit down from the previous year. Again, the economy has slowed a little bit, and some of the consumer stuff has slowed also. Again, not a big significant change, but overall, kind of in line with last year, but down a little bit. Last year, we were at 65% at this time of the year. This year, we're at 58%, so nothing dramatic, and it's about 400,000. More information is in the report on that. General fund expenditures, again, the general fund is the main operating fund for the city. Last year, we were at 67%. This year, we're at 66%. Again, kind of in line with expectations, and there's additional detail information in the report. There is also in the report a brief summary of some of where we are as far as the enterprise funds and fund balance and revenues and expenses. But again, the main operating fund of the city is the general fund. So with that, everything's in the report, and basically the recommended action is receive and file the third quarter report dated May 23rd, 2023, and is on file with the city clerk. And that concludes.
Do we have motion? Any questions first?
Do we have people that?
Any comments?
No comments?
Looks like it's mostly staff out there.
No. I'd
Just here for the
move to receive and file.
Second.
Okay, motion is Cabral, second is Noblock. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Next item on the agenda is presentation of the City of San Clemente's proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget.
We'll be going through the fiscal year 23-24 budget. I'll try to move through things quickly so we can get to council's questions a little bit later on. And I'll just go through the budget workshop agenda. We have the budget overview, and we'll be going through different department budget highlights, the CIP program, a brief overview there, decision packages, and address any questions or council discussion after that. So, budget transmittal letter, again, during the last year, for the accomplishment, we've completed the City Hall council chambers. We've implemented the new permit software, and that's the Track It software. We completed the 321 pension funding strategy and Steed Park concession stand upgrades, and I would also include the lights out there. So those are some of the accomplishments during the last year. Some of them are operating, some of them are related to CIP items. There's a complete list in the report, or in the budget. Current issues, again, maintaining the quality of life within the city and maintaining operating position for uncertainties into the future. Again, just want to circle back to the city strategic priorities. The city strategic priorities were brought together by the previous council and identify some of the key priorities of the city. Again, the first one is financial in nature, and then the second one is related to service and operations. Third one is related to infrastructure and technology. Fourth one is related to recruitment and retention. And fifth one is related to a strong approach to basically digital transformation. So we try to incorporate those throughout the budget. Again, the budget is going to encompass all these funds. We have the general fund. They're basically broken into two categories, the governmental and the proprietary. The governmental include the general fund, which is the main operating fund, special revenue funds, and capital projects funds, which are there to be used for those specific purposes. Proprietary funds are to recover costs through either user charges or charges to other funds. Enterprise funds are generally external, so you have the water, sewer, so those are charges to customers outside of the city. The internal service funds are charges within to other funds to recover costs. The all-fund summary for 23-24, there's a brief outlook, and on the left-hand side, you'll see the left-hand side includes all activities. So again, it utilizes reserves and other fund balance for one-time costs and capital costs. The right-hand side basically excludes capital and one-time items. So this is all those funds. A brief overview of all the funds is here. We have the general fund, special revenue, capital projects, enterprise, and internal service funds. And the total spending plan is $189 million. Focusing on the general fund, again, the operating position. The operating position for 23, or fiscal year 22-23 is on the left-hand side. That was based on the adopted budget. There was operating position in the previous year of about $400,000. This year, our operating position for 23-24 is about $152,000. And also I want to point out on the top right-hand side, you'll notice a little bit in red the page numbers that are associated with these various graphs and information. General fund operating position, again, $79,641,000, and we have operating expenditures of $79,488,000 for a general fund operating position of $152,000. Again, this excludes any capital or one-time costs or one-time items. Here's a brief little picture of the general fund revenues. As you can see, the main property or the main revenue sources for the general fund are property taxes and sales tax. They encompass about 71% of the general fund revenues. The total revenues are $79.6 million, and there's a makeup of all the different revenue sources. So going into a little bit more of the detail, the dollar changes kind of compared to the previous year's adjusted budget and this budget. You'll notice the increase in taxes. That's primarily related to property taxes. Intergovernmental, you'll see a decrease, and that's related to one-time grants that were budgeted for and anticipated to be received in 22-23. Another decrease down on the bottom, you'll see interfund revenue, and that is related to one-time transfers of American Rescue Plan funds into the general fund to support activities.
Hey, Jake, on that note, and I don't want to interrupt the flow, but, so one of the things that was interesting was when you, some of the numbers say that the general fund expenditures are greater than the revenue. Can you explain why that would be? Like, even in the third quarter report, I think it had the expenditures up into the 80 millions and the revenues down in the 70s. But I know that's not where we are.
Yeah.
So what accounts for that delta there?
That accounts for the use of reserves or the use of fund balance for one-time activities. That would include capital projects such as sand replenishment. I believe that was 1.9 million in fiscal year 23 that we have allocated. Also, any payments under the 321 plan, that would include about 3 million, and there's been other capital projects in addition to that. So those are essentially the use of those one-time resources and why expenditures would exceed revenues.
Okay, but that money doesn't mean we took in less than, or we spent more than we took in. It's just that was money that was already there, I guess, that we just spent this we happened to spend this year.
Yeah, it's basically available funds from previous years. That's, again, why we try to focus on operating position, make sure that our revenues are in line, our operating revenues are in line with our operating expenses so that we're maximizing those revenues for the operating costs. And we're not taking one-times and adjusting them and basically.
As if we got that all the time, I guess,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the operating position sort of takes out those one-times and shows us what's really going on. And that we are in the positive, I guess.
Yes,
in
the
black.
152,000.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Question, could you repeat the delta that made up that $3 million difference that the mayor just mentioned? You mentioned 1.9 for sand, another, what was it, 2 million for the,
I believe it was,
Pay down?
I believe it ended up being about 3 million for pension pay down, and then there's other capital projects and other one-time costs associated like that.
1.9 for the sand, and what was the number again for the pay down?
For the pay down, it's a total of 3 million, 2 million, and 1 million that went to,
How much of that delta is the pension pay down? Is it 2 or 3, 2 and 3, is it 5?
well, it's a total of 3.
Total of 3?
Yes.
So it's the 3 plus 1.4, so that's, get you up at about 4.
Yeah. And then there's other capital projects and other one-time
Any
activities.
major capital projects of significance?
I'd have to take a look, but some of the other things would be the implementation of the Track It software. You know, that was a substantial cost, I want to say about 300,000. And we'll probably go into some of them as we go through the budget and
I
the
just wanted to get
presentation.
The bulk of that large 3+ number.
Yeah.
I didn't quite follow that the first time, so thank you.
Okay. So again, property tax is a main driver for the general fund. You can see over time, it's been growing, and again, we're anticipating about 43.2 million, and the city gets about 16.6% of whatever property tax dollar goes to the county. So the city receives 16.6 of that. Sales tax, again, you can see a general trend upward. Again, there's been changes over the years as the outlets have opened, and then the Camino de Australia have increased, and then also there was the Wayfair decision, and then the pandemic is smack dab in the middle there. So you can see the general trend is upward, though. So general fund expenditures by category. One thing I do want to point out, you'll see the biggest category is contractual services, and that would include the police and fire contract with a lot of other maintenance contracts related to that. Second biggest would be the personnel area at 26%. So a little bit of a perspective of where the spending goes for the general fund by category. And here's a little bit more detail and how we compare to the previous year. Personnel is going up. Again, that includes the MOU increase, merit increases, and the addition of the coastal administrator, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, and also potentially the park rangers, which we'll talk about later also. Contractual services, we'll get more into that on the department. It's a bit of a decrease, but once one-times would be factored out on that, it would be an increase. Capital outlay, there's the 3 million, and the sand replenishment, again, that was 1.9 million. Interfund transfers are down by 834,000. That's $1 million that was transferred in '23 related to the Clean Ocean Fund, or to the Clean Ocean Fund. And then the debt service, that decrease is primarily related to payments under the 321 plan. So by department, here's a little bit of a perspective from that. By department, police services, again, 25%, fire services, 17%. So you can see those two by themselves make up a large portion of general fund expenditures. The other component that I would say is a big component is public works, and that would be maintaining the streets, the infrastructure, the parks, and basically everything engineering, parks maintenance, and facilities maintenance do out there. So the big components are police, fire, public safety, and public works. General fund expenditures department, again, here's kind of the dollar change compared to the previous year. We have the '23 adjusted budget and the change to '24. I'll go into each of these in a little bit more details and covering some of the highlights.
I'm sorry, real quick here. The handout that I got here, the numbers aren't matching up with what's up there. Is there a difference that changed from the handout that we got, or is?
No.
Okay.
They should,
This should be on page 83, correct?
yes.
I'm seeing a dollar change of 6.99 million instead of the 5.34. And then on
Oh,
two-
that includes the change in fund balance. So if you go up a couple of lines,
Oh, I
you'll
see.
see the
Got it.
5 million. I took out the fund balance because that's I'll call it a separate slide that we
Got
talked
it, I
about.
see. Okay, thank you.
All right, not a problem. So general government, I'm going to kind of explain it, the bottom area. This is kind of a brief overview of the general government, but I've got a slide that kind of go through the various department highlights. Personnel changes in the general government, again, the addition of the coastal administrator position. Supplies decrease in the city clerk file system for vital records. That was a one-time cost that was in 2023. Contractual services decreased by almost 900,000, and that is comprised of the computer software, that would be Granicus, legal services, professional services, and assistance, and then the CASA JPA amount, that contribution going down. Other changes, there's a decrease in election expenses. We had the election in November of 2022, so that was in the previous fiscal year budgeted. Interfund transfers total 1.5 million, and that includes the street improvement, or a transfer to street improvement, capital reserves, and transit. And I highlighted the 1 million decrease, I kind of mentioned it earlier, was the Clean Ocean transfer that was done in the previous year to support operations. Other amounts included in the general government include the UAL pension payment. That's the 1.2 million, which is 1/3 of TOT earmark, which was based on the LTFP discussion. And then a couple other items are the DBA for 34,000, downtown parking lot leases for 42,000, and maintaining the council contingency at 16,500. So we can have a highlight there for finance and administrative services. I'll just move on to the highlights. Again, FAS staffing is fully budgeted. Supplies decrease in the postage area, primarily related to more of a shift to online bill presentment. Contract services, we have the class and comp. There's a decrease from the previous year, and that's related to the class and comp study. Also, there was a shift of about 74,000 related to ambulance billing, which was moved over to the ambulance program and moved out of finance and administrative services. Other charges also decreased, and that's primarily related to special events, whose budget was moved to general government. So public safety, I'll stop on this one for a second. Again, I mentioned that it was going down 2% on a previous slide, but once all the 321 plan payments are excluded, you'll see the program budget up above, and so the increase is about 6% between all the public safety, if you exclude, I'll call it those debt or those UAL payments. I'll go into each of these by program. Public safety, the police services police services department totals about 21.1 million, and that's comprised of the OCSD police services contract, costs for supporting them, including fleet, communication, citation processing, crossing guards, enforcement assistance, and also the UAL payment for past police officer. That's a decrease from the previous year due to the payments under the 321 plan of $1.4 million. Police services contract by itself is about 24.6% of the general fund operating costs. OCSD contract's about 18.3 million by itself. The contract excludes deputy negotiations, but an amount is included for the budget. The initial base cost of the contract was anticipated to go down, but we've also factored in 1.25 million for negotiations costs, which is probably about 6 to 7% of their contract in anticipation of those. We don't know the actual costs until negotiations are concluded, and sometimes we get mid-year information related to the cost that were negotiated at the county level. One thing that I will point out, we have the council-initiated decision package, which we have a slide on later, and that's the additional of the four patrol deputies at a cost of 1.4 million. That is not currently included in the budget, but we have a slide to address that later. Public safety emergency services, that includes OCFA and the ambulance service contracts. Again, we have the UAL payment for past fire staff, and there's a decrease there again for the 321 payments. OCFA total contract is about 11.5 million and 11.3 for the base contract. The difference is the facility and vehicle costs. The contract budget increases by about 556,000, which is about 5.2%. You might be going, oh, but we're capped at 4.5. Again, it includes the phase-in of the fourth firefighter or paramedic. Ambulance service cost is about 2.1 million, and it increases about 280,000. That's primarily related to staffing costs and other costs associated with providing those services. And most of those are recovered through ambulance service fees.
That's what I was going to say, Jake. So I think we cover all of it, don't we?
Yes, yeah, it's about 2.1 that we get in on the revenue side, so,
So the ambulance doesn't really cost us at the end of the day.
yeah.
Did you factor in the new contract for the new fire contract? I know we have the
Yes,
max. Okay.
yeah, so. Marine safety, the total budget is about 2.1 million. The marine safety base program budget increases by about 2%. The total program decreases 3%, primarily due to prior year capital costs, and that's related to lifeguard towers. Community development, here's a brief summary of the department. I'll get into the highlights. Personnel increase is due to the park rangers, and basically during the year, we had to shift some budget costs over to contract staff assistants, so that's down in the contractual services, and again, the MOU and merit increases. Supplies decreased by 13,000 from one-time office equipment. Contract services decreased by 1.6 million, and this kind of goes to Steve's question earlier. The 305,000 related to maintenance and computer software, that's the Track It program, and then contract services, some of the other one-time items, housing element, master plan, or the wireless master plan, coastal zone work, and other related items. Also some inspection and plan check review services and flock installation of cameras. Public Works, brief summary, all the different programs related to that. The highlights, again, personnel costs increased 420,000. We had to move some of the budget down to address some contract items. And then addition, we've had a little bit more overtime and adjusting for merit increases also. The overtime is related to higher activity levels. Supplies increase by about 48,000, and that's primarily due to two things. I'll call it inflationary impacts from regular supplies, and then also we implemented or have some one-time costs in there for replacement of tables, benches, and trash cans. So them by themselves are not the 48,000, everything together for the supplies is that. Contract services increased by about 67, and we have some pluses and negatives there, increases and decreases that kind of impact. Again, office or the operating equipment and utilities costs have gone up, but they've been partially offset by the contract increases or the contract costs related to the geotechnical assessment at the old City Hall. Capital outlay is lower by 2.8 million, and I'll highlight the 1.9 million related to sand replenishment for the vast majority of it, and others are various capital projects. Beaches, Parks and Rec, 3% increase. The highlights, personnel costs are generally flat with the previous year. Again, some of those adjustments have occurred already during the fiscal year '23 budget. We've addressed aquatic staffing and the part-time class and comp, which is a lot of their staffing-related costs. Supplies increased by about $17,500, and that's related to decision packages for touchpads. Contractual services increased related to holiday tree and cost of service study. And then other charges increased by $139, and that's primarily due to higher activity levels from class instructors, reimbursements or payments, and special events costs. So here's where fund balance ends. Basically, the total fund balance at the end of the year is anticipated to be $18 million, or it's essentially 23% of operating costs. So the emergency reserves comprise 18% of that, and the unassigned or the savings account make up the rest. Again, 23% is where we end up from an operating cost standpoint of how much that equates to. So staffing, just a brief overview of staffing. Full-time equivalents, FTEs, 201 from that aspect. The net effect is an increase of 2.75. The positions added increase the 3 FTE. We have the coastal administrator and 2 park rangers. Some other positions which were modified were the regrade of the lead park ranger, and then a couple of other minor changes that were essentially cost neutral for the other 0.25. So I'll go through the other funds. These are primarily special revenue related funds. We have street improvement, gas tax, local transit, and some of the activities that we're doing in there. The local transit is where we account for the trolley operations and SC rides program. Again, funding, the 265 comes from the general fund, and then OCTA has some grant funding which is being reimbursed there. However, we're anticipating decreases in the funding level, but staff always works to try to maximize those reimbursements. Park Acquisition Development Fund, these are more capital project in nature. We have the Steed Park Pickleball for $2 million, storm drain improvements, City Hall generator installation, and La Pata Vista Hermosa artificial synthetic turf replacement are some of the capital projects related there, and also the San Luis Rey Park restroom replacement for $750,000. Again, some of these are in the capital improvement section, but figured I'd point them out. Enterprise, these are to recover costs. This focus is primarily on operating funds. We have the water fund. Essentially, the costs are going from $26.5 million to $27.4 million. The largest increase is $500,000, which is in supplies, which includes purchased water. Sewer operating costs are anticipated or budgeted to remain flat at the $11.7 million. Storm drain operating remain at $1.6 million. Clean ocean costs go from 2.2 to 2.4. We're anticipating the clean ocean fee renewal. And those costs fund compliance, street clean, and improvements for better ocean water quality. Solid waste, the costs are decreasing. That's primarily related to one-time costs in 2023. Golf, the operating costs go from 2.9 to 3 million. And we have golf course marshals and principal repayments on loans that were from the reserves there. Capital improvement program, capital projects, there's 37 capital projects for $37 million. Those are generally a little bit more complex and large in nature. The maintenance projects are usually a little bit smaller and more maintenance related. There's 37 of those projects at $8.4 million. Some of the significant projects include the water quality improvements, Steed Park, Doheny Desal, Reeves Pump Station, and Montalvo and Riviera Beach Trail Bridges. So the recycle water quality improvement, again, the budget is $12 million for '24. Steed Park Pickleball, the $2 million. Doheny Desal, the $1.5 million is incorporated for '24. Reeves Pump Station.
But on the Doheny, we're paying towards that?
It's kind of a placeholder for potentially
we
purchasing
do,
into
okay, I
that system,
gotcha.
yeah. So Reeves Pump Station, 1.5 million. Montalvo, 400,000. And then throughout the projects, there are multiple pavement preservation and street improvement projects. And those are just incorporated through various aspects or project activity. Some of the completed projects during the last year, I'll call it the sports field lighting. And then these are, I'll call it more profile type ones, and the park monument sign replacements. Obviously, there's other bigger projects that have been completed, but these ones have good pictures for them, so. Budgeted decision packages, these are the decision packages that have been incorporated into the budget. Again, the focus is on financial, and then services and operations, confidence and value, maintaining infrastructure, the third one, and recruitment and retention, and then a strong approach for digital transformation. So some of them will be IT related also. One thing I do want to point out, here are all the general fund ones, and this includes both operating and one-time. The operating ones are the first four, and those are the coastal administrator, the park rangers, the lead park ranger, and the regrade for that, and then the UAL pension payment. And then all the ones in italics are one-time in nature, so they're, I'll call it non-recurring. There's a BPR cost of service study and just other various ones. Total general fund impact of all those decision packages is 1.7 million. The decision packages for other funds, I put on the right-hand side the fund that's associated and the decision package that is related to that fund. You can see it's a mix of utilities, golf, and information technology, again, going towards digital transformation and maintaining infrastructure. The total cost of those, and it's all one-time cost, is $876,000. The council-initiated decision package. Again, this came about as part of last week's meeting on 5/16/23. The option selected was for adding 4 additional deputies. The 4 additional deputy cost is $1.4 million. Right now, we have an operating position of $152,000. We were asked to kind of take a look at and potentially find ways to fund it. One of the ways was, was looking at it, and what we considered was looking at both decision packages and finding an alternative. Again, this would be, based on council's discussion, this would be a one-time cost, and we would remove the additional park rangers because those would be handled through the deputies, or I'm assuming it was the same services would be allowed. And then the use of fund balance for the cost, there is the 3.7 million in unassigned fund balance. And that's the recommendation or the information related or option to handle the 1.4 million of additional costs. So with that, the budget schedule, we had the public hearing on June 6th and budget adoption on June 6th. Some other items that we'll have to bring about is the police contract appropriations limit and staffing report. And basically, staff's recommendation is provide staff with direction related to the City of San Clemente's proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget.
We do have one speaker card also, when you're ready.
Yeah, after the, we're finished? With that? Okay, yeah, you can take the speaker.
Bill Krutinger.
Good afternoon, Mayor Duncan, council, staff. I was informed recently that the city of Dana Point has allocated a budget line item for Tri-Cities Races equipment and materials. San Juan Capistrano has had a budget available for Tri-Cities Races for a number of years. I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head, but I don't believe that San Clemente has one. And it might help get some of the projects we've been trying to push forward unstuck if there was something available for that purpose. It may be late in the process, but the amount that an organization like Tri-Cities needs to be extremely effective is actually very low. So if some funding could be allocated for the procurement and installation of equipment that this Public Safety Committee recommended, I believe, a little over a year ago, I know they'd appreciate it, and so would we. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Patricia Holloway.
Hello, council members. I'm Patricia Holloway, 40-year, 40-year San Clemente resident. I'd like to ask the council to, support Public Works Department proposals to plant and maintain the city's street and park trees. Besides making San Clemente a more beautiful and healthier place to live, our urban forest or green infrastructure helps make our buildings and traditional infrastructure work better in a number of ways, such as retaining and cleansing stormwater runoff before it enters the ocean, cooling our streets, homes, businesses, sports fields, and lowering our air conditioning costs, among other benefits. Please support the decision package to plant approximately 100 new trees. It's so important for San Clemente to expand and grow our urban forest, and that can be hard to do, especially if we have another year like this past winter where we lost so many trees due to storm damage. But even in a normal year, we've got, pests and other problems, vandalism and other problems in keeping our trees healthy and alive. I also want to make an appeal to budget for tree planting and replacement in connection with public works projects such as street repair, bikeways, sidewalk and handicap ramp projects, sewer and storm drain installation, because oftentimes when we engage in those projects, we're having to take out street trees to put the handicap ramps in, or we're having to remove trees in a parking lot because we're repairing a, broken sewer line or something. So anticipating that and budgeting for tree removal and replacement if you cannot maintain those, especially those mature trees. Finally, I want to compliment the Public Works staff for their work on Arbor Day this past April, where in collaboration with Rotary, the Garden Club, and Citizens Climate Education, we planted 22 trees at Forester Ranch Park, and these groups and I hope to continue this into the future, with helping to donate to the city to fund Arbor Day plantings and to help us celebrate our Tree City USA status. So thank you.
Thank you.
No more speakers.
All right. Any questions or discussion?
Well, I have sort of a question of our city manager, and it deals with the format of our budget. I know you're new to the city, and this budget format has been in place for a while, but I kind of found it very difficult to follow. It's not concise. You have to hop all over the place back and forth, even during our presentation today. But I just think there must be a simpler way to do a budget presentation. And I just want to know your thoughts on the formatting of how this is put together and how it's presented. Not necessarily for this year, but just your thoughts generally.
Yeah, thank you for that question. In fact, Jake and I talked about this first thing this morning. We talked about better ways to present the budget, not only to the city council, but to the public, so that it would be easier to understand, easier to find things. There's kind of been a push over time to try and make the budget either more concise or maybe less wordy. And so what we've done is there's been a lot of roll-up into very few line items. I think it's probably important for us to maybe expand those line items so that people can see. For instance, the best example I can think of is personnel. We wrap up everything into one line item called personnel, but that actually encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses salaries. It encompasses how much money we spend to CalPERS for our retirement. It encompasses benefits, insurance, a lot of those kinds of things. And so what we want to do is maybe unpack that a little bit so that people have a better understanding of just exactly how much the personnel line items are costing us. And I think that that's going to be important. We talked about that this morning. We'll want to temper that a little bit with, the city is putting in a new enterprise software program in the next year or so. The program that we currently have it's old, it's so old it can't be serviced anymore. So we've got to update that with a company called Tyler Technologies. So we'll be doing that. So it's a really good time to rethink of what our budget looks like, how accessible it is. One thing we want to be is extremely transparent, that any resident can simply pick up our budget, go through it in a very short period of time, and understand where their money is being spent. So that's one of the things we're really going to work on in the preparation of next year's budget.
I just wanted to weigh in also on Steve's point. And I know we've talked about it already today, earlier in the day. But for example, I'm going to give you one example that makes a point. I think I was looking to find out an issue that we had talked about was our website improvement. And if you look through everything, the whole book, you see nothing about enhancing our website. But it's in there somewhere under a line item for IT, but you would never find it because it's a budget item that just doesn't explain what we're doing. So those are the kind of things that I know with a lot of the issues that we've brought to you, you've done that, but things shouldn't be hidden like that. And I know it's not hidden, it's just that's the way it's presented, and it needs to be easier for us to access and the public to access, and maybe once we get this new IT infrastructure in place, we can even make it easier.
I agree. Excellent point. Excellent example of that. Yeah, it's just something very small the council's asked for. It's very difficult to find. We're going to make sure that those kinds of things are much easier to find. Make it queryable so you can actually put in search words and some of those kinds of things. I think that's going to be important.
Before we move on from that general point, and I don't want to lose the point, we had the speaker talk about the Tri-Cities RACES program, so Volunteer Emergency Communication System. Is that covered by a broader line item in the budget? Do you know, City Manager, I know, again, you're sort of new, and this hasn't come up too much, and maybe Kyle can help, or?
Yeah, we
is that
actually talked
something
about
that-
it yesterday, so we have
Okay,
some
excellent.
breaking information for the city council.
So we get, I think it's 163,000 a year from Song, am I on here? Can you hear me?
There it is.
There you go. I think we get 163,000 a year from Songs for our emergency preparedness, and we have money that we
I
can.
thought that went away, or?
It was 200 and something thousand, and then as we go further in time, it'll be less and less. I
Okay.
think now it's around 100, 160. We have some funding there that we could spend on some of this ham radio equipment, some of the stuff that Bill's talking about.
Okay, so we can, now, when do we make that decision?
Well, I mean, the budget's, we're talking about it now, but we have, small dollar amounts. Some of it pays for our
We're
consultant.
talking like $4,000 or $5,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yes, sir.
we have the 160,000 pot that we're going to potentially approve, or it's going to be part of this budget that gets approved. When do we make it available for Tri-Cities RACES, some part of it?
It could be July 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so we could decide that tonight or some later meeting as well. I guess.
Yes, sir.
Kyle, just because it's been brought up, do you want to talk a little bit about the location and stuff so that people know where we're talking about?
Yeah, and Bill might have to refresh my memory. I know we were talking about a location on the pier, but I think we scrapped that. Now we're talking about a water reservoir.
Right, water. That's
correct.
Yeah, and it was just one location, was that, okay?
Okay. Do we know whether Dana Point or San Juan has a specific line item for this kind of thing, if they do their budget differently so that it actually would be somewhere in the budget, or if they do it similarly to us? We don't know.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
This normally wouldn't be a line item in the budget because
Right.
it's such a small amount, but it would be under either other professional services or contract services. So we'll make sure to include it. It's a small dollar amount. We've talked about it. I think it makes sense. It helps us, in the case of an emergency, have one more vehicle for communication if things go down. So I think it's really good.
Yeah, redundancy kind of. Okay. All right, thank you, Kyle. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. is the unassigned fund balance, is that where we would expect to fund, let's say, a special election if we're not able to agree on the appointment of a fifth council member? Would that be, that's not, those funds aren't set aside anywhere in the budget, but I assume they'd come from the unassigned fund balance?
That is correct. Yes, that unassigned fund balance essentially represents proceeds over expenditures. And so this year, we anticipate at least 3.7 million. That's probably a conservative number, probably a little bit higher than that. And that's where that money, that's where unanticipated costs would come from. We certainly want to continue to grow that over time. It's continued to grow over time. But yes, that is the short answer to your question is yes, that's where that would come from.
And regarding the Cypress Shores sewer issue and the repair work down there, I understand the repair work isn't, I'm getting complaints that the tubes are still on the ground, nothing's been undergrounded. And as that goes forward, that's currently budgeted? I assume there's a line item somewhere, I don't know where it's at, but that's
Yeah.
in the,
Dave could speak to that, but that would be in the water department, in the sewer department. But he'd probably give you an update because this is also very dynamic. Information's changed in just the last day or
my
two.
concern is that the cost of that and the potential for that cost to increase.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is money that's budgeted in the current fiscal year for the sewer pump station replacement. And then there's a California coastal permit application in for replacing the storm drain in its previous location and then to put the pump station back into operation.
And those costs are currently budgeted, and you don't anticipate any increase necessarily that would go outside of what's budgeted, or?
There's money that's budgeted, proposed in the next fiscal year as part of the budget for the storm drain relocation in its current location. But for the pump station, that's already budgeted in the current fiscal year.
Okay. And while you're at the podium, Dave, if I could, the 1.5 that's been designated for the desal project, I was under the impression we were waiting for the South County Water District to complete some sort of financial analysis and let us know what the costs were. Have we received anything from them in terms of specific financial data so that we know if we were to contract with them or form a JPA, a Joint Powers Authority, what the cost would be? Have we gotten anything from them? I haven't heard that. I'm just
Their
wondering if
current estimated cost for one MGD of participation is actually $2 million, not the 1.5, and that's from recent information. But we are still waiting for, like you had mentioned, we're waiting for information. South Coast has been busy working on the JB Latham plant through SACWA. Their contract expires, so their staff has been focused on that at this time. But I anticipate receiving more information from South Coast in the near future, so we can come back to council and provide a recommendation.
Okay, I look forward to getting that information. And this 1.5 is just your best estimate of if we go forward, what our cost might be.
Yeah, potentially for the design component, to
Just
get
for
it
the
through
design
design, and then if there's a construction phase that moves forward, and what that might look like, as you had mentioned, whether it's a JPA or whether it's operated by South Coast Water District, that would be something that would be decided after they get through that expenditure of the 1.5 million for 60% design.
And that wouldn't need to be budgeted this year? You wouldn't expect that in 23, 24, that we would be in the actual hard construction costs that we'd need to budget for if we were going to go forward?
No, the design will take probably a year and a half to design, at least a year to 2.5 years to get to
So
that 60%
we're beyond that,
design.
even another year and a half for construction
That's correct.
budgeting?
Yeah.
Okay. One other question, Mr. City Manager,
Before
I'm
you leave,
sorry.
I'm going to have a question for him, but
Yeah, go ahead.
so don't leave. No.
Go
No,
ahead.
you go ahead. I don't want you to.
No, I'll pause because I had something for the city manager.
I want to move back to Cypress Shores because I know this year's budget, we ran over probably every month for the whole year on the budget for the Cypress Shores sewer replacement, or at least the storm drains, right?
For the pump station, emergency pump station operation, it's been costing $130,000 a month. And so that was never a budgeted item. We went back to council every few months or 6-month time frame to budget additional funds. And so it's been very dynamic out there.
My question isn't so much about, the budget for that. We will have the money for that, but about the delay. How is that, how are we going to end that? And how are we going to get that done? And what's the time frame now?
So I'll do my best to estimate a time frame, but last week, our city staff pulled back the plastic, we moved the K-rails, we took a look at our existing infrastructure, there was some liquids inside the pump station, so we pumped it down, we videoed the pipelines, and we found the sewer lines and the pump station are all in good potential working order. We pulled the 2 pumps out there, we sent those in to be refurbished, and we met with a geotech on site who believes that if we put the pump station back in operation, we're probably looking at a series of caissons adjacent to the pump station and sewer pipelines. The soil that's at the top of the headscarp, he called it junk soil, so there's not a lot of lateral support from that. So by putting in caissons, that would provide some additional support. But our geotech is putting together a report, and I anticipate getting that in the next few weeks, but there may be a potential to put the pump station in operation without having those caissons in place for a limited time frame. City staff is working with an electrical manufacturer to put together a skid-mounted motor control center. Our motor control center, unfortunately, was damaged. It didn't have power for the last year and a half. So all the equipment was exposed to moisture. Normally you have heaters inside there that keep the moisture from forming. So we have to replace our electrical equipment. So we're looking at a temporary setup, which will get us off this pump watch and reduce our costs maybe down to $20,000 a month, while we're still waiting for the California Coastal Commission to give us a permit to go back to a more permanent location. So temporary, if we can get back to a temporary pump station situation, we're probably looking at 2 to 3 months is my estimate, hopefully at the far end. And then by the time we go through the Coastal Commission, order parts and get a full pump station back in place, I would guess more like 9 months or so from that time frame.
So we have everything done with the Coastal Commission. We have all our applications, permits in progress, or?
Yeah, Amir Okanapor and his group helped to put together an application that was provided approximately 3 weeks ago, roughly. So we're still waiting for the Coastal Commission. And then we met with them, as you're aware, on site as well, so we had an opportunity to discuss the importance of that project with the Coastal Commission staff.
Yeah, I was going to add, that site visit was very helpful. I'm glad they came down and looked at it firsthand.
But the news about the caissons, that just came out yesterday, and I'm waiting for, more information from our geotech, and then we'll forward that to Coastal.
And are there any other impediments to get this done? How's our relationship with the homeowner associations? And because I think at some point in time there was concerns there.
The homeowner association has been very cooperative and helpful. They brought in a contractor to help remove plastic and then put it back into place last week. And then I had a conversation with a couple of their board members in discussion about putting in a temporary electrical cabinet on site. And so staff will need to contact the one property owner, Mr. Bigley, and since the transformer would be placed on his lot, and I know there was some issues with that in the past, so we'll have to broach through that. And if we can't put it on that lot, then the transformer potentially could go into the HOA parking lot.
Okay.
Where our temporary pump watch is operating.
That was going to be my question. I thought we had plans months, maybe a year ago, to put the transformer on the HOA property so that we wouldn't have those generators going 24 hours a day and all of that extra cost. What happened with that plan? I know that at that point there was some consternation with the HOA in terms of placement and all of that.
Yeah, so there were issues with the HOA. The city doesn't have an easement to be able to put that equipment there, and so we were working with the HOA to get those easements put in place. And then at that time, or during that time, OCTA came in and did a slope stabilization. So we received pushback from, and which it makes sense as well for financial purposes for the city, was to operate our pump station at its current location instead of relocating the pump station. So it's been a curvy road with this project. There's been a lot of ups and downs and changes over time for various reasons, but that kind of explains what happened, why we didn't go with the temporary. We didn't have an easement and the ability to put our facilities in place. But ultimately, if we can put our pump station back in its current location, it will be a cost savings to the city.
You'll still need to put a transformer in there somewhere, the,
So the transformer would be in a temporary location, and then ultimately, if we're able to build an access road to connect to our old electrical equipment, the transformer would then be relocated to that site where it was previously located. And the HOA and property owner would prefer that as well.
yeah, okay.
So.
Okay, I wanted to ask the city manager regarding, there was the reference to a file management program, one-time expenditure of 180. Is this a new file? I'm not familiar with that file management program. Is that new? Our current system working, or?
That is a new system for the city clerk's department, and she could probably explain more in detail what it is that she's trying to accomplish.
I was just curious what.
Yes.
It was one time, was that
It's
an
one time.
annual?
Yes, it's a one-time, basically, we still have several files stored over at the old City Hall location, 100 Avenida Presidio. So last year, we put in a decision package to move some files over. We have a smaller decision package this year. It's around 12,000, I believe. And then there was a second decision package, which is a Muni code update, which was a higher number, 40,000. Is that what you're referring to, or?
Well, there was a reference to 180,000 one-time expenditure regarding a file management.
No.
program.
Oh, EDM, I'm sorry, that would actually be a question for IT. So.
I guess I was just wondering, is what we have currently broken? Is this an add to our system, or is it?
We need an
that we-
update to our EDMS system, correct, which is our electronic document management system. It's how we search for any documents that are.
And is it a program
electronically
that helps
stored.
you identify and search?
Exactly, yes, and it's very out of date.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I had one other question on the cost, the possible cost of the Casa Romantica slope stabilization. Is that anywhere in the budget? I didn't notice it. Maybe hidden, it may be there somewhere.
It is not, Councilmember, because right now we don't have a very good estimate about what's going to happen out there. Again, that's the importance, and we talk a lot about this. I know there was some talk about whether or not we should reduce our emergency fund balance to 18%. I would be one certainly championing that we should keep it more at like 30%, because some of these things that come up, like Casa Romantica, that are not in the budget, we do need those emergency funds at times. We will be coming back to you. I think what the work that's happening out there right now is to stabilize the slope, to make sure that we don't have any further movement. Where we go from there and how we rebuild the slope, and maybe Kyle has an update, because again, these are very dynamic situations, but it is not in this budget. That would come from some of that $3.7 million fund
That
balance
would
that we
come,
have.
that's what I
correct.
thought it might come from the unassigned fund balance. That's just what I need to confirm.
Absolutely, that's correct.
Thank you.
But
That's-
the money you spent so far came from that emergency fund balance for the emergency work that was done?
That's correct. Well, that, and then some of it may be covered by the insurance company as well. We're still working with them, and a good portion of the costs that are going to be accumulating by just shoring up the site, a lot of that will be covered by the insurance company, but we're still working with them. So we don't know exactly. Now, not all costs will be covered by the insurance company, and that's why it's a little ambiguous right now. But right now, we're just doing the basics to shore up the site, and then we'll come back to city council. I think we're going to have a workshop on exactly what we do with Casa Romantica and its repairs. Do we repair it the way it was? Do we make it a larger patio? Do we have a patio at all? We had to make some pretty serious damages to the amphitheater. Do we rebuild the amphitheater? I think these are all important policy decisions that the council is going to have to make. But the key right now is to get the slope stabilized, and then we'll come back, and we need to have a pretty serious discussion about the future of Casa Romantica and where you want us to go with that.
Can you help me understand then what's budgeted now in the capital improvements, the 1.5 million, that is for a totally different project, the roof or something?
Yeah, so we have responsibilities, sorry, maybe Kyle's going to answer this more in
My question
detail.
related to that is, if we haven't decided what's going to happen with Casa Romantica, do we put a new roof?
Well, that's a real good point. We do have ongoing major maintenance that we are responsible for at Casa Romantica, and I see Kyle's up here to answer the question, so I'll let him.
So we actually have several accounts for Casa Romantica. We have $30,000 that it's in our agreement to do HVAC repair work and just other repair work there. That's in an agreement that we have with them. We have $150,000 because the building needs to be repainted every 10 years. That's in there. And then the $500,000 and $1 million, that is for some some roof work that needs to happen. We want to just do some assessments. It's a historic structure. It has historic tiles. We have to remove the tiles, replace underlayment, put the tiles back. That's why the cost is so high. The first year, though, we just want to look and kind of assess what needs to be done. Then the second year, do some actual repairs.
So my question would be, is if we're going to make an assessment overall of what we do and what needs to be done, would we do repair the roof in advance of even thinking about it comprehensively, or repainting the whole building, at $1.6 million? If
I still plan for the building to be there in perpetuity, and fixing the slope and doing those permanent repairs will come. But I still think we need to do repairs to the building and keep it in good working order.
Okay.
I have just a question on the trolley. As it is right now, a question on the trolley, sorry. As it is right now, we don't have revenue to continue the trolley past, the blue line, I should say, past, is it the blue line? No, the green line, the south side, the green line, past this May. And then we may, in the presentation, you recommended that we are still looking at other revenue sources from grant monies from OCTA or other places. Is there any talk of budgeting for extended trolley service if we don't find that general revenue, or do we need to look for other areas of revenue as well to fund that trolley?
Yeah, so I think, might have been at your last meeting or the meeting before, there was some discussion about the Green Line trolley and what we could do to continue that service. I believe that the number was around $240,000 to continue it through the summer. The challenge in continuing through the summer is that the transportation would likely not occur on what appears to be a normal trolley. It would be probably more like airport shuttle vans, if you will, because there's no more trolleys available once the red line and the blue line begin to operate. So we have put in a request to have OCTA look at what it would look like to expand that system and whether or not they would consider expanding the system to include the Green Line. I don't think we got a real positive response on that, but we're gonna ask anyway and see if we can do that. If not, and the city council is inclined to do that, we would need to start looking at perhaps the purchase of a vehicle and doing that kind of on our own dime. I think we want to get more answers for you before, we want to get answers from OCTA and see what involvement they would have before we come back to you and say, okay, here's your options on the Green Line, you're going to have to do it all yourself, or this is the contribution that they'd be willing to make. Here's, I think I've even had discussions with Jonathan about, can we even approach them about perhaps changing the route of the line that goes between Dana Point and San Clemente to maybe include some of the stops that were on the Green Line, so maybe just an expansion of the existing service and what that looks like. I don't know what any of those answers are right now, but there's definitely an interest, and certainly from this council and the community, to find a way to continue the Green Line service. And so we're trying to do that. I think that the trial period was a success. I think people really did enjoy having the Green Line in place.
Thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, in our discussion at our last meeting, I think we established that our priority was just getting the red and blue line up first, and that would even be at a shortfall from the OCTA monies at a couple $100,000 that we would have to pay to keep those two lines running.
That's correct. It looks like that funding is dwindling. Yeah, so we're kind of hanging on for dear life for all of that. We'll continue to do that.
But we are pursuing that money,
That's
too.
correct.
Okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you.
I don't know if I see Jonathan. Oh, there's Jonathan. I don't know if you have any other update on that. He's the point person on this.
So he's going to tell us he found the money.
Oh, good.
Not yet, but just to continue that thought, I have reached out to OCTA. I don't have a response yet on those specific questions. So I'll be coming back to council to outline the responses from OCTA on those questions about whether that specific line could merge with the blue line, whether we could change which vehicles are used in what location. So I'll bring that information back, as well as some options for your consideration if you would like to self-fund that. And then Jake can comment, but we have included in the budget for the continuing service, of course, for the Red and Blue Line. That begins daily operations this weekend. We anticipate, again, in the broader conversation, a new grant opportunity later this year that we'll be applying for to seek additional funding.
Thank you.
But if we wanted to, say we got no answers and we still want to do the Green Line, we would have to take that out of an unassigned fund balance or just dig into our own coffers, I guess, and pay for it.
Correct. That's the crux of the question to OCTA. Our grant agreement involves 90% reimbursement. If they are not supportive of those changes, then we would be funding the entire cost on our own.
That would include the cost of a vehicle.
So the cost that I had presented previously, it's about $100 per hour of operation of a vehicle for the Green Line on a white shuttle, not a trolley, which includes the cost of rental from our operator, LAZ. So we're not looking right now at a purchase or acquisition, a one-time cost. It would just be what will come back to you again is considerations that build in a vehicle rental cost on top of the driver hourly costs.
Are there even extra trolleys available right now, like in our region?
No. So as part of this grant agreement, each city purchased their own vehicles. So that's the upside. We own all 5 of those vehicles, even though OCTA covered a lot of those costs. We own them, but we own 5, and that's all that we have available. There's not like a county depot of trolleys. Each city owns their own. So the 5 that we have, 3 on the Red Line, 2 on the Blue Line, are the only 5 that are available.
So we just have to take one at Dana Points.
We could do a midnight operation.
Yeah, that's it. Now, doesn't some of our outdoor dining money go towards this trolley program? Was that part of the idea when we were collecting some of the money from the outdoor dining operators?
That was the general idea, but we were collecting those funds into the general fund, and so the goal was just to make sure that we were offsetting those costs. We also have some carryovers from 2020 and 2021, so that's how we're able to operate at full service this year, is because we had some carryover from OCTA grant revenues in those prior years, which again is why the upcoming grant will be important for future years to make sure that we're in a good position.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Any other questions or, I have a couple other ones, but Steve was asking, we have these decision packets in here, right? The yellow sheets and then there's one blue sheet. Are we deciding those today or providing guidance on those today? Or is that something that comes up at our next meeting when we approve the budget?
Yeah, we're asking for a decision so we can move forward and do the public hearing and then bring forward budget
And
adoption
have
at
it
the
all
next
kind of
meeting.
all set up before the public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. So we should go through page by page on the decisions?
Yeah, that's, or you could say in total, we're fine, or general fund ones, however council would like to do that.
Okay. Quick question on a couple items before we get into those. There was a decision made by council. I know that there was like a third of the TOT was going to go towards pension pay down. I thought there was also money, we were reducing our amount on a fund balance, maybe like an emergency fund balance to pay.
Yeah, the emergency reserve was reduced from 20% to 18%, which basically put about 1.6 million over from the emergency reserve into that unassigned fund balance.
The unassigned fund balance, okay. That was one part. And did we say that 1.6 or whatever it was going to go directly to pension pay down, or did we just say, put it in the unassigned fund balance?
It was just changed the percentage from 20% to 18%.
Okay. So the only decision we made to make direct prepayments basically or overpayments to the pension was the 1/3 of the TOT.
That's correct.
Okay. Before I get back to that, the coastal, or the Clean Ocean Fund, This keeps coming up the whole time I've been on council. We stopped collecting the fund, or the fee?
The fee concluded, and it wasn't renewed. It's in the process of being studied, and a renewal is going to be sought in the future. Dave might be able to comment a little bit more on that, but we have incorporated an amount into the next year's budget in anticipation of the fee. If not, there would need to be a pullback on those type of related costs. So I'll let Dave
The budget
expand.
anticipates there will be a new Clean Nation fee.
Next budget.
When would that start, I guess?
Yeah, probably halfway through the fiscal year.
Okay.
We'd be looking at coming back to council in approximately the next 3 to 4 months, and then going out to a vote of the public through a mail ballot.
Has to do, okay, that. But we have enough now to pay for these expenses from prior fee payments?
At this time, we've been leaning on the general fund as of last year. And so there's a capital project, for instance, that's proposed next fiscal year. If the Clean Ocean fee doesn't pass, then we wouldn't move forward with that project. And we'd look at other alternatives. But 80 or 90% of the project is funded through grants. So we wanted to get those allocated through OCTA, assuming the fee does pass.
Okay, okay, thank you. Well, at the risk of getting into, let me say, first of all, do we have support here for making sure that the Tri-Cities Races has a specific allocation out of our, what is it, $160,000?
Can you explain to me what this is?
Where's
what this-
Bill? Did he leave? Darn it.
It's basically equipment put on where we have some reservoirs, and it's equipment so that ham radio operators can communicate with each other.
So if
Volunteer-
all hell breaks loose and all communication systems go down, this is like an old-fashioned ham radio system where you can still communicate and still say, hey, we need help, and this is what's going on, and bring food and supplies. And there's a group of individuals that want to, that volunteer their time to participate. They just need a few things from the city, like a place to put the equipment, not even the purchase it. They have the equipment, the place to put it so that the communication system will work effectively. And like Kyle's saying, one of the places is like one of our water towers, right? So get on the water tower, use some of that space. There's a value associated with that, but rent the space, I guess, or give it to them rent-free, basically, so that they can set up the equipment there. Do they also want money for equipment too, Kyle, or do they want some money for that
I
too?
think they need, a little
They need a
money.
little
And I
bit.
think it's like $1,000 or $2,000, that they would give us most of it, but maybe update some of it.
So what number are we thinking here? 5,000, something like that, or
I don't think it's going to be that much, but I think that's a safe
the
number.
budget for that, and then it would be less than that?
Yes, sir.
Is that something that we can get? It's
Is this
such a
a,
small expense.
is this a public owned function, or is this something that this private group, who I don't know anything about, owns and controls and can turn it on and off and decide who has access to it?
I believe they'll donate it to the city, the equipment they have, and we'll install it at our water reservoir. We might buy some extra equipment, and they'll be able to use it, though.
Well, I have no problem with the public using it. I would have a great concern if it's owned and controlled by someone that can turn it on and off so that the public isn't completely benefited and have access to it.
Yeah, I think the way it works is basically they donate their time, they donate some of the equipment to the city or to the cities, I guess, and then they maintain it. They practice with it, right? So they know that it works. They're going to be the ones who operate it because nobody else knows how to do it when everything goes down. But they're not keeping it for themselves. Basically, this is like a public service.
Yeah, I'm a little, I don't quite understand. Ham radios are like CB radios, except more sophisticated with a different band and much greater access, or lengthwise. But how do you control, I'm confused about what it actually is. If it's a relay station or some booster station where you can increase the range, I don't quite understand what it is.
They want it at the highest point in the city because that'll give us the best coverage. I'm not totally familiar. I know it's antennas, so they can, use frequencies and
Yeah, I like-
and talk.
I like the concept.
I'll say
I
this,
just
like,
don't know what it
I'm no
is.
expert on it either, but they spent extensive time with the Public Safety Committee, I know that, right, who are more kind of familiar with this. This is a redundancy. Look, our sheriff's department, fire, they already have sort of systems in place, right, to be able to communicate, but this is in addition to that, and I think it was unanimous from the Human Safety Committee that we would support, in some small way, the efforts of this group. So that's all I'm saying is like, let's not help them out when we have our sister cities that are, doing their little tiny part.
I understood we didn't have to create a line item. We could just, at some point in time, just say it's okay to move forward with. It's so little money that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is let's just do it right now. Like why wait to have it?
Well, because we don't know a lot about it.
Well, it was recommended and approved by by the Public Safety Committee. That's.
So what if we do this and say, let's budget for it and then bring it back as something when we have more information and a presentation of it?
Here we have someone who can speak to it right now.
Put on the
Yeah.
spot.
Mr. Leffler,
We will,
please come to the podium and explain the Tri-Cities. Bill set you up on this. The Tri-Cities RACES Emergency Communication Program. This is something that was presented to the Human Safety Committee. He wants to just make sure that we allocate some small amount of our emergency services, fund money towards this program to help out with providing a location and possibly some equipment purchase.
Absolutely. This was brought up actually a couple of years ago, and we took a look at their capabilities, which were really, really impressive. We're kind of behind the curve in San Clemente. We've always recognized it, but other cities like San Juan Capistrano has just jumped on it, and they have a great volunteer system there. Basically what it is they just want to put up something up there by the water tower, an antenna, so they have the capabilities, and it just gives redundancy. The police department is for it, the fire department's for it. They like having any possible resource they can in case of an emergency. And what's really good about RACES is they're really organized and well-trained. They train all the time. They have redundancy within that redundancy. They have several people that can access their communication system if one goes down. And while certainly we hope that our fire department, police department, marine safety, they're 800 megahertz. We haven't had any issues with it during emergencies, but you never can tell. So there's really no downside, is they just need a little bit of space, and then they like to sit in on the training when we have tabletop emergency exercises, and that's what they do in San Juan, and that's actually in San Diego County. It's really, really strong down in Vista and Oceanside. It's a thing. Like I say, we've been a little bit behind the curve, I think, in welcoming these people in, but I see no downside in it whatsoever.
Okay, all right. Does that help anybody?
Yeah,
I still don't have a clue what it is.
I
have to agree with Mayor Pro Tem. And Bill Krutinger could certainly come and give you a little.
Here, and he laughed.
Yeah, I know. He gave us one, and I just shook my head. He has like a football box which has all the stuff in it. It seems to work, but how it works, I'm not sure.
Okay, I guess we have an emergency fund that could fund this. I just don't know what it is, and maybe at some point it'll come to the council for approval to actually
I'm
give the
just saying-
easement and allow them to have access.
I don't know that we need to bring it back. I'm just saying, let's set aside some small amount. It can be capped at 5,000, 3,000, I don't know what, so that they don't have to come back to council. They could just go right through city staff. It's already set in place and it's already there.
And as I recall, the amount of money wasn't really that substantial.
No, it's really low, yeah.
When they
But
presented it.
Bill was saying, Data Point's got a line item, or it's allocated in their budget for 6,000. San Juan is 5,000. So he was asking that we do something similar. So I'm just asking.
we'll include funding in the budget, and that amount actually is within the spending authority of the city manager. So if it seems to be consistent with the conversations you've had today, we'll move forward with them
Okay.
and help them
Good
out.
enough for me.
Well,
And
thank you.
by
I have
the
a
way,
public
I-
safety meeting, and then I'll
There you go.
see you guys later.
I am a little bit of an expert. I saw a movie once called Frequency, and I think
There
you
you
could
go.
go like back in
You
time
probably
with
know
these
more
things.
than all of us.
Yeah, they're very complicated. So
Anyway, all right, okay. I'm trying to make it so we don't have to meet again about it, because it's not something that I think we need to spend a lot of time on. But I think it's a good idea. So, all right, so let me get back to the 1/3 of the TOT. I wasn't really supportive of that idea. I'm still not, because I don't like I don't like paying today's dollars for an unknown, debt in 30 years from now. So is there another way to set aside money to make sure we have available funds to pay our CalPERS annual payment, but that gives the city a little more flexibility for things like Casa Romanica, things like the trolley, things that pop up where we need money in our general fund to be able to potentially, come up with.
Can I add to your comments?
Sure, yeah.
Couldn't we put it into a 115 trust that, earned money that we kept control over, and kept it, where the city had the control instead of into a fund where, PERS.
state fund?
Yeah, where we don't know where the money is, and they actually don't do a very good job of collecting interest or earning interest. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think that this issue is important enough and complex enough that I think it's critical that we actually have a separate work session on our unfunded liability. It gets talked about a lot. I think it's very much misunderstood. I think that there are some really good strategies to address it. I think it's a critical issue facing every community in the state today. And we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. I think that we should, and I'm very glad to organize, in fact, I would love to organize a meeting with the city council where we could have a representative from CalPERS themselves come and talk to us, and perhaps some companies, because the CalPERS themselves has a 115 program, or some other companies that provide the 115 trust, and really talk to us about the most creative strategies to address this situation. I can tell you that everybody's taking a different approach to this. One thing that I can say is that this city has been very aggressive and very, I think very appropriately aggressive in trying to get ahead of the UAL issue. I think that we are doing very good in comparison with other cities. I agree. There was a comment made to me earlier today. I don't care what other cities are doing. I agree. We want to do what's best for this community. But I think that it is an important enough issue and complex enough that we could probably spend the next 2 or 3 hours talking about the best way to approach this. And what we do is we brush over it because it's such a complex project or process, and yet potentially it's a $42 million issue out there that we should really be serious about, and probably deserves a very in-depth conversation. In the meantime, yeah, I do think that there are ways to address the UAL through with 115 trust. I'm very, very supportive of that, but I want to make sure that we're addressing it, and I want to make sure we're doing it in the most responsible way possible. You mentioned a little bit the time differential of money. That's correct. Do we want to pay for something with $100 today is worth a lot less than it will be 10 years from now? That $100 is going to be worth less, and yet a lot of our UAL payments are fixed payments. So again, I would very much love to have this conversation with the city council in a separate workshop, maybe a fifth Tuesday, a Tuesday where we don't have a meeting. Maybe we could organize a meeting, bring in some real experts, give us some really good advice on how to do that. But again, absolutely, there's a better way perhaps to do it than the way we're doing it. And I'd certainly like to explore those options with the city council.
I agree we ought to explore those options, but we adopted the 3-2-1 plan. The one was the 1 million for a trust, which we never established, and we need to look at that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should take what we're currently doing, which is the 1.2 million from the transit occupancy tax, which we've designated as a source to make part of that 3 and part of the 2 program work. I don't think we should eliminate that at this time.
Well, I think the 3-2-1 is done, right? This is in addition to that.
Yes, the 3-2-1 plan has been concluded. We've made over $6 million worth of payments down on the UAL payments. So the 1 million or 1.2 million of the earmark, that's essentially going to the other liability.
Yeah, I just think until we look at the overall issue, I don't think we should reduce that's a debt that this city will have to pay one way or another over time. There are better ways to do it. I'm all in favor of looking at it, but I don't think we should eliminate that at this meeting.
Okay, well,
I think we should schedule a discussion and make an informed decision.
I understand that, and I can appreciate that we've been, I think we've been aggressive in dealing with that unassigned debt, the unfunded liabilities. But here's my problem. Like, what people care about today is their safety, the cleanliness of the city, whether our small businesses are succeeding, can they move around and enjoy the town? So we're sacrificing those quality of life investments to pay for a debt that's going to accrue 35 years from now. We don't even know what the exact amount is because it changes every year. That's my problem. We're not Dana Point where we get 10 million dropped in our lap from some hotel every year. We don't have that extra, unassigned fund balance every year. We have a small amount. We don't get these big bumps, right, Jake, from big hotels or big, some kind of big tourist location. So when something comes up like North Beach, we don't have a big pot of money to just dig into. And so we are even lessening even our small pot of money to take care of these quality of life issues, which are most important for residents on their everyday life, to make a payment towards an unknown debt that's accruing in the future. It's like paying. It's like making an extra payment on your mortgage and then not taking your kids on summer vacation. That doesn't make any sense. They're going to be grown up and out of the house soon. You got to take care of what's in front of you right now. We are already ahead of the game versus other cities on our pension pay down.
And being ahead of the game is good, but I don't understand how we're negatively impacting public safety by paying down.
We
that
don't have
fund.
$1.4 million for the sheriffs. We're going to have to dig
Well,
that out of somewhere else.
Of course we do. We have a $3.7 million of unassigned fund balance, which will more than pay for it.
Well, but what about the 10 other things we need to do, right?
And that
So-
unassigned fund balances in case there's an emergency like that Casa Romantica, those are supposed to be set aside for emergencies, or daily quality of life things like rebuilding North Beach or trolley services, or whatever it is that our day-to-day life right now, things that we want to see our citizens enjoy today, we're limiting because we're pushing this off 50 years in the future when that money isn't going to be worth as much.
It's going to help us $5 worth 50 years from now to pay $100. That's not a good investment for me. I'd rather make people's lives better today and tomorrow. But let me ask this question, because you threw it out, City Manager, that, okay, this is a larger discussion.
Sure.
This is a council decision. I mean, I didn't support it, but it was a council decision to do this. And this is now going to be, into the budget?
Correct.
So the problem is if we wait till some future meeting, then we're going to approve a budget that has this in there. And I don't want to have it in there. I think it's a bad investment.
Yeah, so perhaps
in our residents.
Yeah, maybe I can try to reach a middle ground here, and that's not my job, but maybe I could suggest that, again, we're in kind of the final stages of putting the budget together right now. I think this is a serious subject, and we do need to spend some time on it and talk about it. Remember that there is an amendment process for the budget. So the budget is prepared with the $1.2 million in there. We do need to pay for, if the council wants to proceed to hire the 4 additional sheriff deputies, we need to fund that. Right now, we would fund that from that $3.7 million of unassigned fund balance that you have available to you in this year's budget. And then if we want to have this workshop and we want to come back and amend the budget and say, okay, here's our strategy going forward, there's a process for that. I would say that we're probably, let's be honest, we're probably ill-prepared to have that conversation today, only because we haven't looked at the timeline that it takes to set up a 115 trust. That takes many months. So maybe it is one year of the TOT while we set up a 115 trust and see if there's a better way to do that. And on the other thing, on the other side of that, one of the things we want to be careful about is that what we're looking at with the Sheriff's Department here is, are they going to be effective in trying to address the issues that have been raised by the citizens in North Beach? If they're not, we may have to go a different direction. So perhaps in this case, maybe it's okay that we are funding this additional 4 officers on a one-time basis so that we can analyze and make sure that they're actually able to accomplish what you're hoping to accomplish. If not, I can tell you, because I've had to live through that sad experience, if we were to put additional officers into the operating budget and then for whatever reason in the future remove those, That is a very difficult process for council members. I'm just trying to be as honest as I can here and very transparent that right now, we don't know that this process is going to, we hope it will work. I think it will. I think our sheriffs do a fantastic job. But right now, this is still just kind of an exploratory process to see if it's going to address the issues that the council wants addressed down in
Okay.
the new beat that they're talking about, if you will.
Good enough. Okay, we'll table that for now. Is it time to go through the decision packets, or do we have any other questions, or before we, is that the
Mayor?
last kind of thing we need to do before we, to conclude
I
the?
do want to let you know, we have one additional comment. Whenever you're ready to
Yeah,
hear
let's
that,
hear the
speaker.
comment card, yeah.
Hear it now? Okay,
Yeah.
Amanda Q.
Well, council members, sorry, I was listening to the meeting earlier, and initially I was going to be here, but I had to think about lunch. Or eating, basically, So last year I spoke about the budget, including ADA requirements such as the San Gregorio restroom stall, which is not ADA compliant. Also bringing Maxburg Park into ADA compliance regarding the sinks, because it's not the right height, it's not the right, it's not situated correctly. It's my understanding the ADA transitional plan have not been updated since 2010 and 2011, and that's a big, huge concern there. Last year, I was informed that the cost of to convert ADA compliant, the restrooms to ADA compliance would be millions due to the walls are concrete blocks. However, if memory serves me right, I think the placemaker plan for the North Beach restrooms to convert it to possibly a substation for OCSD or for the lifeguard, that's going to be coming into $500,000. And I think those are concrete blocks as well. I'm not too sure. But I'm really concerned about how the ADA transitional plan has not been updated since, 12 years, 13 years? And what about ADA, guidelines as far as being compliant to Title II and of the, so I'm really concerned about that. So as we budget for things, I understand Mayor Duncan brought up some concerns regarding budgets and how we're going to have to raise money for one thing or another. But that's where I come back and remind you of the concerns that residents brought up, like myself, regarding how much money we're spending for pickleball in the master plan for beaches, parks, and recreation, when it never went to the planning commission at all. But you're willing to spend, $15 million in the whole plan to do that and bring 24 courts to pickleball. But what about ADA compliance? What about ADA rights? And I remind you again, I filed a complaint regarding the ADA with our ADA compliance officer in the city of San Clemente. I also filed a complaint with the Department of Justice, and that was escalated to the Department of the Interior. So that is something that when they determine that the city has to be compliant and force that and make it an issue, then you have to, there has to be some end date to be compliant with ADA rights at San Gregorio Park, at Maxburg Park, and any other place. So I just wanted to remind you of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, what's the best way to go through these items, do you think?
I would probably address the other fund ones first, and then maybe go to the general fund ones, if anyone, and discuss whether there's any issues in the other funds, them being one-time in nature, and then maybe breaking the general fund one up into the operating and the one-time costs. That would be my recommendation.
Are they put in that sequence in the package here?
I can go back.
Well,
It says it's got about 20 pages here.
does anyone have an issue with any of these? Maybe that's the easier way, right?
Yeah. So
If there's an issue, let's talk through it.
Yeah, the other fund decision packages are listed on the slide, so we can talk about any particular issues or questions that council might have related to specific ones.
Well, the third one on the page, we've tabled the one-third occupancy tax until we have a larger discussion on ADL and UAL reduction. The first two I don't have any problem with. Going through the rest, let me look real quick here.
Yeah.
Just as an update, I know it's been of interest to the council. We have finished the job description for the new coastal administrator. We anticipate that that job will be posted likely by the end of the week. And so hopefully when the new budget is adopted, we won't be very far into that budget when we have that person. I know that was a priority, so we're moving on that.
I did have some questions. I didn't oppose them, but related to the parking pay stations. And my concerns is just overall about parking, how we address parking at San Clemente. It seems like, it works very well, and I understand we need these machines. But a lot of cities use, instead of meters, they use the machines throughout the city, which seem to work just as well. And I know quite frequently the meters don't work. I don't know if you get more opportunities to break down if you have, 500 meters than if you have 3 machines or 10 machines. But do we have plans to look at that, or can we look at that in the future? And it goes back to the issue we raised the other day about where we're going to have parking enforcement follow the street cleaning, and also parking enforcement for the cars and vans that are parked illegally around the town. And then just the general lack of parking enforcement overall. I think that's something we need to get a handle on for this city. And let us know, what will work in the end. And this, I know this is just a small part of it, but I'd like to see a larger effort to deal comprehensively with our parking issues in San Clemente. And I don't even know if what people pay right now is a fair amount or a right amount, but I know we have a lot of free lots too. You could park on, Del Mar is free, but you go a little bit further down, you got to pay. So I'd like to at least look at why and the system that we have and the rationale for where we put meters. Maybe it's just to keep people gain revenue from tourists or make sure there's parking. But is this something that we could have somebody look at and get back to us on?
You want to start charging on Del Mar?
No.
We'll get the room packed on that one.
No, I don't want to. I just want to know why.
That's a good point. And also, I thought these machines were relatively new, so I was a little surprised that we're replacing 11 pay stations.
Yeah, there's no such thing as new on the coast. Things
that's
don't last very long.
All right.
But one thing I would say is, yes, I had an opportunity to speak with Councilmember Cabral today, and I think he's right. I think that we do need to provide to the city council a very clear policy for what we're doing with our parking. Right now, it's inconsistent. Some areas like street sweeping is a little bit more aggressive. In other areas, it's kind of spotty and here and there. We want to make sure that we are enforcing and providing parking enforcement in the way the city council wants us to. That's an item that I think warrants bringing. Again, I don't want to push off all these things in the future either, but right now, I think that we do need to assess that and come back to you with a comprehensive plan of, here's a parking plan for our city, and here's how we plan to enforce that parking. It's one thing to have parking regulations, it's a whole nother one to enforce them. It doesn't do you any good if you don't enforce them. So we need to marry those two and bring those back to the city council for consideration, because right now they're a little inconsistent, without question.
I think we already gave you that direction at the last meeting.
At the last meeting, that's correct.
So you want this item pulled then from?
No, I'm actually fine with just, at this point in time, replacing these machines, because these are in the larger parking lots. I think we do need them. But I just wanted to raise the point that we need to address the larger park, because I understand, on the street there, the parking meters, they don't work, and nobody pays them, so, and people park there all day and never get a ticket, so why have them if you're not gonna issue tickets?
That's right, and that's why I told Kyle he needs to move his vehicle more often, and that might be what he's complaining about. I didn't know if you had anything to add.
Wait,
Oh.
I do have the one, so we have the app at the Pier Bowl, I know, right? We have
Yes.
the app.
The parking app,
Right.
that-
You don't need a machine for that. You could do it just your phone. But I know that we still have the machine, so people can use the machine, they can also use the app. This is replacing the machines in areas where you can also use the app. I mean, you see what I'm getting at? Maybe we don't need the machine, we just have the app.
Yeah, the app is only applicable in some areas. This is for, Andy's right, they're in a marine environment. Electronic parts that just don't work really well that close to the ocean, they have to get replaced fairly often. The app, I'm not sure, it's not in all the areas where there are stations. So there's several ways that you can pay for parking around the city, and I'm sorry, I don't have a better
But
answer for you.
I think it's a great point. I think we do need to move more towards the pay stations because again, the maintenance on these individual parking meters is very high. Perhaps the pay stations is a better option, but we need to, you've asked us to come back with some comprehensive stuff on that.
I'm saying I don't even think we need the pay stations.
We may not.
You go to Balboa Island and they just have the app. There's
Yeah.
no pay stations anymore at a lot of places. So, but for now, I understand we need these because we have areas where we don't have the app all set up, and that's fine, but, okay.
But that might be a direction.
Yeah, when we have the larger parking discussion.
Include that
Why
in
even
that.
we're in a marine environment where things break down. If we can avoid having any of that infrastructure, let's do it.
But you just may have to have like the big parking lots there down at the Pier Bowl that have that other option of someone paying in cash, just because there will be someone, a tourist, that just doesn't have a phone or.
Give them a ticket. If it's a tourist, they live in San Clemente.
Get the license plate first.
Tow them, right? We get a towing fee out of them.
All right. Okay, yeah, we can incorporate that as part of the larger discussion. Any other items that anybody has heartburn with?
No, they're all good.
Pretty small stuff here, mostly one-times.
Can we pass them in full?
Do we need to
Exception.
vote on this, or, we don't have our city attorney here. What would you like, Jake? What are we
You'll
doing
be
with-
voting on the budget on June 6th.
So we got
We're
we got
going to plan
direction,
to
got
include it
direction.
without dissent. We'll include those in the
right.
budget for your
So those
consideration.
are all approved with the exception of the TOT modification.
Yeah, we're pulling that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that one gives direction about a 115 trust, which we
Okay.
haven't
I'll second your
figured out
motion to
yet.
approve the balance.
All right.
Okay, do we need a motion, or is direction enough?
Directions.
Direction.
Direction
enough?
sufficient.
Okay,
so.
all right, we're clear on that. And do we have anything else, Jake, any loose ends that we
One
need
times.
to?
The non-general fund.
Yeah. We have the other fund decision packages, and then do we also want further clarification on the police, the council-initiated decision package?
Which I think they've made pretty clear also. But
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we were all in agreement on that.
Any concerns on the non-general fund items? Go back one slide. there.
I don't
Right there.
think so. I think we were looking at all of them.
What page is that in our notebook?
45.
And that was the one that included the pay station, so they're all listed
You know, while
out
you're
there.
looking at that, I do want to commend the city council. It was really great to have conversations with all of you, knowing how much time you put into reviewing this. This is a lot of information. But I also want to thank Jake and his team. You got one book. He gave me 8 of the same thing that has all the backup data. So Jake, I know it's a lot of work, and if you would thank your team for us, you guys did a lot of good work on this. So thank you.
All right, yes, thank you. You had brought up the electronic document management system.
Yeah, I
think
see, I see that was in there, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a Brian Brower expense, so he's
Mm-hmm.
responsible for that. No, I think that adds to the efficiency, so that's a good investment.
I'm just curious what the municipal code recodification is.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were going to start.
Oh, okay. That's just an update of our Muni code. Many of our codes are outdated. We haven't had a Muni code update in years. I don't know, a couple decades probably.
So as you pass ordinance amendments or resolutions, at some point you need to update the code and put those in there so they're actually part of the municipal code instead of kind of loose additions to it.
I'm fine with everything.
Anybody have a problem with any of these? Okay.
Mayor and council, we'll do our very best on June 6th to keep other items off the agenda. That's the night that we would be considering the budget, so we'll do our best to not have any really long items on there so you can concentrate on this very important issue.
We talked at the beginning of the meeting about the format of the report and the presentation. Do you anticipate that changing at all before this next approval, or?
Yeah, so one of the things that Jake and I talked about tonight is the council's it's very important that you have a lot of the detail and a lot of the big books and whatnot. The presentation we give on June 6th, we want to make sure it's very clear to the public and a little bit more graphically driven, because that's a little easier, well, you saw even tonight, the charts are a little easier to digest than the numbers. And so we'll really concentrate on helping people understand what they're getting for, where the money's going in a more graphic form.
Yeah,
So
I know that's a very short period of time to transfer so much
Oh, he's
data
a
into a
Superman.
different format. So you're saying we will be seeing something a little different on June 6th?
In the presentation, that's correct. The budget probably will look very similar, but the presentation to the public will hopefully be a little bit more graphic driven.
Thank you.
Well, I as a final note, I'd just like to ask, what we see here too is that we, and I mentioned it before, but we don't have any new revenue sources, right? We're kind of treading water here. When would be the appropriate time to talk about additional revenue sources and how that could affect our budget? Is that the long-term financial plan meeting maybe that was a couple months ago?
Mayor, you stole a little bit of my thunder. I haven't even told Jake this, but I hope that Jake will allow me to take just a few minutes and talk to the city council a little bit about, I've showed a few of you a silly little diagram of a tree, but I think it illustrates how a municipal budget works. And again, for us to expand services, you have to have additional revenues. So we'll certainly bring that up on June 6th about the importance of that. The challenge is that most revenues in a city, of course, require the affirmative vote of residents or some changes in ordinances, and so they don't happen immediately. But we should have a discussion about, we won't be able to continually cut our way to success. At some point, you do have to make sure that your revenues are keeping up with your needs and your expenditures. And I think it's important to have that conversation.
That would be something over time that we would be talking about, though, not
Oh, yeah.
for the next meeting.
Probably unless there's something in specific the council would like to look. For example, I know last election, there was some discussion about whether or not to raise the TOT, for example. If the city council would like us to explore that immediately, we'd get started on that, and we'd bring you the process to go through that. So if there are some specifics that you want us to consider and get started on, absolutely give us the direction, and we'll jump right on them.
Okay. Maybe we can start the ball rolling in the context of the budget, though, because there's things we want to do that we just can't do, right? Like that, I would like to do more park development too, but we don't have it in the budget. So we have to pick and choose what we do and try to prioritize resident needs. And it'd be nice if we didn't have to make so many tough decisions like that, and we could do more. So we can have that discussion next time. Victor?
We were going to look at the coastal fees. Is that right? We did agree to that, I think.
The Clean Ocean?
The Clean Ocean is a perfect example of that. That's an opportunity to raise some revenues that I think could be very supported by the residents and really helps offset. And I do think, for instance, we have the new coastal administrator. Right now, that's just coming directly out of the general fund. Perhaps a portion of that could be covered by the Ocean Council, which would free up then funds to do some of this other work. Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, I imagine that person would be actively working on grant applications for sand. And I think in terms of additional revenue if we focus, let's say, the Clean Ocean, the TOT, and other revenue sources, and focus that source on sand replenishment. I think you would get universal support that those, TOT, for example, the increase would go specifically for our beaches and for sand. And in addition, the Clean Ocean, which sort of does the centrifuges and cleans out trash and does all sorts of things, if a portion, all or a portion of that could be also focused on sand, I think, again, would have universal support. So maybe we need to focus on the things that we do, focusing on.
Well, I think what I like about that is there's a linkage, right? Because what is sand but
things that many tourists enjoy.
Tourists,
here.
I mean, the beaches is the revenue generator, right, for our city. That's the core of it. And so you got to preserve that, and that is economics, and tourists enjoy it, so that's a great linkage. You know, similarly with the Clean Ocean fee, because that goes, directly to kind of healthy beaches and things like that. So, okay, let's think about it in that context. I think when we think about revenue, if we can tie it to what we're hoping might come out of it, that would be a benefit.
I would also add, there's a lot of grants that I think we're down 70%, right? Maybe it's just for this time of the year, but, as we get these new positions, I mean, Steve and I went to a conference on coastal, you did too, I guess, and, there's a lot of money, a lot of grant organizations out there that are giving money away for the studies, for efforts to replenish and preserve your beaches. So, once we have a coastal administrator, that person should be able to get some of that money, hopefully more than their salary.
Absolutely, by a huge factor.
I think so.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, that's a great comment, both specific to that and generally speaking. I noticed that there was several questions from you. And by the way, again, I hope the public understands you've been through some pretty in-depth briefings on this information, so it's you guys have done a lot of studying. But you noticed that there was it almost looks like a reduction in the amount of money that we're getting from grants. There's not truly a reduction, it's just we don't have them yet. So throughout the year, we'll get those grants, and then we'll come back with an amended budget, and you'll see that, that's why we end up at the end of the year. That's why we typically end up with more proceeds than we do expenditures. It's not that we're hiding anything now, it's that throughout the year, we do have some of these grants and other funding sources that find their way into the budget, and we'll make sure that we are very transparent about how that happens.
Yeah, and I think we call him the coastal administrator, I call him the sand czar. I think that we need to make, and Sandy, this is in your purview, I want to make sure as an organization, as a bureaucracy, we don't have silo mentalities where our departments say, he's the sand guy, we're not the sand guy. His priority is not our priority. This is a city priority, and he needs to have the authority to move interdepartmental for assistance, for grant writing, or for whatever, and that he exercised the authority under your direction to really make this a laser focus. And if he's got a day when it's not 8 hours focused on sand, that you have him doing other important functions in the city. So this person, I presume, will be under your jurisdiction and have more authority than just the sand. If you need him on an occasion to do other things. Or her, yeah.
Yeah.
He, she, whatever.
No, clearly, this is a priority for the whole city, and we all need to be conscious about what's happening at the coast, and you're right. There needs to be freedom to be able to use, for instance, I think engineering is a good example. They'll need help from the engineering department to put together applications and other things that are happening, and without question, in all the conversations I've had with the staff, everyone understands this is not only just a priority of the council and the residents, it's a priority of our staff. And we're a beach town, and so that's the most important thing for us.
I think you called him Sandy. We were so wrapped up in sand.
Sand's hard, not Sandy.
All right. Anything else, Jake?
No, I believe that's it. So.
Okay. No burning unanswered questions or things that you need? Thank you for that great presentation. Thanks for all your work, Jake.
All right, thanks.
Really appreciate it. Good to know we're in solid financial position. Does anybody have a motion?
I'll move that we adjourn the meeting until
It's all in here.
30 minutes.
No. I think we have to adjourn to the regular council meeting, right?
Correct.
It's, somebody want to read it?
I'll read it for you. Motion by Councilmember Enmeyer to adjourn to, I'll say, 3:25 PM. The next regular city council meeting is scheduled to take place on June 6, 2023. Closed session will begin at 5 PM, and the regular business meeting will begin at 6. The meeting will take place in the council chambers located at 910 Cali Negocio, second floor, San Clemente.
I will second Mr. Enmeyer's motion read by the city clerk.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All in
And-
favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, it's unanimous.
And we do. Thank you.